Hello, Mr. Forbes. How are you, sir?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Let me turn this thing on. There we go.
Nice to meet you virtually.
Thank you. And the same to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking time to talk to me this evening.
Of course. Let me see here. There we go. I'm trying to take down my background. I don't know that I can do that while I'm in call. Can I?
I believe so, but I've never really messed around with it. I can't. Not much help.
Well, I'm not gonna worry about it. The only reason I was gonna take it off is because behind me, it's in my paddle. Do you guys still do paddles?
Yes, sir. I think so. They actually skipped my pledge class because we were during COVID, but all the other ones have, yeah.
Oh, really? So you're a newer brother.
Yes, sir.
When did you pledge?
I pledged last spring, but I'm actually a junior. I pledged second semester sophomore year.
My son, Auburn, is also a beta.
Oh, cool. Neat.
Yeah, he goes to George Mason, and in fact, he just brought me this a few minutes ago. Can you see it? I don't think you can see it.
Yeah, well, you definitely deserve one of those.
He got one of these. It's their rush shirts, I guess. Whatever. We never had those, but
Cool.
yeah. So my son is also a beta, but I'm telling you that because he just got in. He pledged last fall, so yeah. So he just got in himself.
Cool, nice to see a freshman.
He is a freshman.
Awesome.
But he took 2 years off, so he'll soon be 21, but he's a freshman.
That'll be an advantage.
Where are you from?
I'm actually from Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta. Okay, good for you. And what brought you to Virginia Tech? You got family or program? Or...
Yes,
Apparently,
sir.
they have some sort of engineering school there in Georgia. I forget the name of it in Atlanta. It's a great big one, but
Yeah. No, I'm actually a fourth generation of Virginia Tech, so
oh, good for you.
Family, yes, sir.
Good for you.
Never considered the Yellow Jackets. All right, so you ready to jump on into it?
Yeah, of course.
All right, so first off, some housekeeping stuff. Where are you originally from?
So nowhere. My dad was in the Air Force. Right, so I lived everywhere. But I was actually born at Clark Air Base in the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
And then I started moving around, and I ended up in Virginia for high school. Well, the end of my high school was in Northern Virginia. I went to 3 high schools.
Okay, well. Did you enjoy that type of military lifestyle, or just kind of adapt?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's all I knew, so it was comfortable for me, and that's what also made me end up going in the military myself. Was it was comfortable for me. Yeah, so I graduated high school from Fauquier High School in Warrenton, Virginia.
Yes, sir.
On the outer I guess on the outer limits of the Washington D.C. suburbs area, not far from where I'm sitting right now.
Oh, that's And what year did you attend Virginia Tech and graduate?
From 86, and then I graduated in December of 90.
And then can you just talk about any fond memories you have of college and beta or just Virginia Tech in general?
Yeah, there's a lot of fond memories.
Just the highlights.
I got into betas. I was in the Student Alumni Association, Student Alumni Associates. You ever heard of those guys? At the
Through Virginia
time,
Tech or through Beta?
through Virginia Tech,
Okay.
through the Alumni Association. So they had a student alumni associates who were like student ambassadors for the university. Whenever they had alumni events, um, or the president had events and they would like to have students attend and mix with legislators or alumni or the board of directors, and they just wanted, students to be part of some event. There are a couple hundred of the students in this SAA, and it was a lot. It was co-ed. I'm telling you this because there were a number of betas in there, and they rushed me while I was at SAA, and I was a junior, and they said, "Come on out, still come on out and rush." So they encouraged me to do that. So in this SAA, in fact, the Student Alumni Associates for the Alumni Association ran all the campus tours. So I was in charge of all campus tours.
Nice.
So, when you come in the springtime and, anytime, we had them every day at 2 o'clock or whatever o'clock, there was a campus tour. So there's a roster of about 50 kids that would do these tours, and I ran that program. So that's how I met a few betas. Tom Zaso was my big brother, who was also in a student alumni association, and so they brought me out, and I rushed, and I loved it, and I loved it so much that I was probably the worst student ever in the university history. Exaggerating, but I was really bad at school. Once I started rushing, I did horrible. In fact, my first semester as a pledge, I barely squeaked by. And then the second semester, when we should have been initiated, I didn't make grades, so they held me back. All right, so I couldn't continue with my pledge class. I got rolled back to the next pledge class, and I so bad in my grades again. I got rolled back, so I was held back 2 semesters.
Wow, so going into senior year, you were a pledge, huh?
Yeah, I just was like a pledge for 3 semesters.
That's crazy.
But there was a pledge brother with me, Douglas Bradford Smith, number 428, because I'm 427. That's the only reason I know he's 428. He was in the same predicament. He also had rolled back twice. So he and I were pledges together for 3 semesters.
Nice.
Not very great students, but eventually we got it together, got our grades up, and started focusing on grades. In fact, after that, all I did was betas in school. I didn't do anything else, so I can get my grades back up. That's kind of important because I did really bad. There are other betas. I had mentioned Alan Latimer, who was an older brother while I was a pledge. I don't know if you want to, you can ask him to print it or not, but he's there for Virginia. He's in Blacksburg. He lives in Blacksburg. But he also did poorly, and he got bounced out of the university. And I'm telling you that because he enlisted in the Navy and went to sub school, and he can tell you the story himself, but I'll just give you the point that Navy sub school is one of the most difficult engineering challenges in the world, because you got to run a nuke powered sub by yourself, more or less, underwater. And if you don't do it right, there's very little room for error, right? So he finished that, came back to Virginia Tech after his enlistment was up. Not only finished college, finished it with great grades, got his master's and his PhD in math at Virginia Tech. And so did his younger brother, his biological younger brother. So both Latimers are PhDs. Both Latimers live in Blacksburg. Brian, his younger brother, is a professor there in the mechanical engineering department.
Oh, cool.
And Alan still does some teaching, but I think he's mostly working in private industry.
I'm telling you that story. Why? Because I too was one of those really bad students. And then I went out in the world, I did my thing, and then I ended up at Harvard. So, you know, it's it's not always indicative, your grades, where you'll end up. It's far too early to know, if you will, who the good students are and who the not so good students are. Um, but you know, here we are, right? So that's one of the fond memories I have. I should say the ironic things about the whole thing is going from really poor student to being a curious person, really more than anything else.
Yeah, that's very
So
cool.
yeah, I remember a lot of that. I remember a great time we had with our parents. I guess you guys don't do parents weekend so much now. You don't do much right now with COVID, I'm sure, but that was always that was a great time. I remember that. My dad still talks about it. And now that my son is also beta, I share with him those stories of my days as a undergraduate beta. So I think that's kind of neat to have a legacy in the house here with me. And I think I don't know what I think he's in charge of the ritual chairman for the new initiates. So that'll be kind of interesting to, hopefully I can bring some of the Alpha Phi rituals to his chapter.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. So you majored in engineering, correct? Undergrad?
I did, yeah. I switched. I was in aerospace, which really killed me. And then Tom Zesa, who was my big brother, was a civil. He was like, dude, you got to go to civil. It's easier. You're not ever going to graduate. And so he graduated. And of course, I was there for so damn long. I got a second big brother, Kurt Kaiser, who also was a civil. No, Kurt was an industrial. No, he was a civil. I take that back. And they were like, dude, you got to be a civil. And so I switched to civil, and I did really great grade wise. Really turned it around. So yes, I'm an engineer, but I was in aerospace and I switched to civil. So that was probably one of the best moves I could have made.
And then so right out of Virginia Tech, you transitioned and got into Harvard graduate school. Is that correct?
No, God, no. No, out of Virginia Tech, I got commissioned into the Air Force,
Oh, wow.
and I was an engineering officer in the Air Force. And I made my way first to Delaware. I worked in Delaware at the big base there, and then down to Florida. And in Florida, I became an explosives demolition officer.
Cool.
So it was my job to blow things up. I mostly worked with the Army, even though I was in the Air Force. I got deployed a lot. I did 4 combat deployments. I was in Panama. I was in Haiti. I was in Bosnia, and of course, all through the Middle East. In 9/11, I had just got out of the Air Force in June of 2001. And in September of 2001, of course, things changed. And they told me they were going to make me come back. And I said, no, you're not. And they said, yes, we are. There's only 3 of you who know to do what you do. And I said, you can't, because I resigned my commission. And they said, hold my beer. And 3 days later, they called me and said, we did better than making you come back in the Air Force. We hired you, and your company agreed to terms, so you got to be here tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I came up shortly after September 11th to DC. I was living in Tampa at the time. Prior to that, I was in Hawaii. So I was in Tampa, and I drove up, and it was still smoldering. The building was still smoldering. It was a crime scene, right? It was the FBI was there, of course, all the police. It was my job to do all the base camp planning for the entire campaign. Because I had been there so much and I had done so much. I spent an assignment, 13 months, assigned to the Royal Saudi Air Force. So I was with the coalition fighter squadron. There were only 2 Americans in the squadron. We were 2 advisors to the wing. So they knew me very well, and so I worked with the Saudis and many of the other coalition countries, and I did all the negotiating and the planning for all of the bases in all the Middle East, all the Gulf countries, Bahrain and Qatar and Jordan and Saudi and UAE and then also Central Asia, so Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all the bases there. And so, yeah, so that's what I did. I came and then after about a year I worked in the basement in the Air Operations Center in the Pentagon for the Air Force, planning all these bases and where to put them and how many planes to put them in and how many people and you just don't know from Blacksburg, right, where you're going to end up. And there I was right in the middle of it. And you just kind of not prepared for that. I remember having a conversation with, at the time, my boss, who was a lieutenant general. So you make a trade-off, right? There's all kind of trade-offs in life. He wanted to put as many people as he could on a base. Okay, you can do that, but you're going to pack them in. But if you pack them in, then they're very vulnerable. So I remember having a very poignant conversation with him where I had to force him to tell me how many people, how many casualties he was willing to take. Right? Wow. It's a very sobering conversation. Wow. What is the number? Because I can then plan around that. I can engineer around that. If you're telling me that your minimum is 100, okay, I can pack in this kind of density. If you're telling me it's 1, all right, it's this density. If it's 10, it's this density. So here's a sliding scale. You got to pick it. Each one of those has a choice on how long the logistics train is, how long it's going to take to bed these guys down, how many sorties you can generate, how much fuel you'll need, how much, it's a web. But those are, kind of things you never think about when you're an undergrad drinking beer at Tots for a nickel on a Thursday, right? You don't think you'll be in those positions where you have to have those very sombering conversations. Interesting. So then after I did that, I started a business of my own. I just had to get away from it. I was so burned out from the military part. And I bought homes. I had a franchise called Homevestors. I think they have one in Atlanta. Pretty sure they do because I went there for training. And I went to Dallas. Their moniker is We Buy Ugly Houses. I bought the franchise in Jacksonville, Florida. And I did really well. I mean, I bought a lot of houses. I flipped a lot of houses. I did really great until the market crashed. The whole mortgage thing was bad for me. Yeah. Good news was I learned how to run a business. The bad news is I learned how to become very, very poor overnight. Wow. But I had to fall back. I was an engineer. I went back to my engineering roots, and I got a job building all those facilities I had designed years previously with the Air Force, but in the Middle East. So I moved to the Middle East with my family.
Wow.
So I moved to Doha in Qatar with my 6-month-old daughter and my 3-year-old son and my family. We moved to the Middle East.
How did you convince the wife on that one?
I think she was ready to move as well. She knew what it was like to live as an expatriate abroad.
So it's it's a very comfortable life. It's a very, very comfortable life. Generally, you get paid very well, and you travel a lot, and you get to see a lot of the world. So it was interesting. My kids grew up. My daughter's we were there in Doha, and building out all these major air bases in the Middle East, and I had an office in Doha, but I would travel to all the other countries in Central Asia and the Gulf states pretty much all the time. So I'd leave in the morning, catch a flight to Kuwait. At night, I'd catch a flight home. Next day, I'd fly to Abu Dhabi in the morning. I'd catch a flight home, and the next day, I'd fly to Dhahran in Saudi. And I learned Arabic. I learned Arabic when I was with the Saudi Air Force. So I did that for a couple of years. Then I got poached. A headhunter approached me about switching jobs there in Doha. So I stayed in Doha for a little while, and I moved to ExxonMobil with the national oil company called Qatar Gas.
Okay.
And I worked with them, and I built out all of their design and built out all of their major shipping facilities and infrastructure. So the design work was done in Paris, so they moved me to Paris. So I moved my family to France, and we lived right in Paris. And my daughter's first language was French.
Wow.
And I speak French. So we lived there in Paris for a while. We did the design. Then we went back when the design was complete, we went back to Doha to build out the facilities. And we stayed there for a while. And then when I finished those, I built those. They're huge facilities. I mean, the size of the jobs, there were 24,000 people on the job. And of every variety. I think there were, 60 some odd countries, over 60 countries that all these craftsmen were from, and engineers, and a variety of, it's a whole city in itself. And we built the largest marine berths in the world for these big LNG, liquid natural gas ships. So that was kind of cool. Learned a lot about that stuff. Started to learn, and then when we finished that, I got connected to a guy who builds super yachts.
Ooh.
So the world's largest privately held luxury yachts. Let's see, hey, cut it out. So I became partners with them, and we started building super yachts. Well, they were building them. I just joined them. They needed a Middle Eastern person who, can speak French. I can speak Arabic. I can speak English. So, and I had a very deep network there in the Middle East of all the important people. So I joined up with them, Super Yachts Monaco, with their office. We had an office in Monaco and Monte Carlo.
Nice. Cool.
So we moved there, and of course, you may know that Monte Carlo is next to Italy. So I learned Italian. It's not much different than French. So we lived there, and we started building out a lot of the biggest. Let me see if I have my where is it? I have a oh, here we go. Here's one of our. I gotta turn this off. Hang on, let me turn this off. I can't turn it off. Can you see? You can't see this. You can see this.
Oh, I can see it
That's
now.
one of them.
Oh, wow.
That's Eclipse. That's the largest yacht in the world.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Eclipse is owned by a guy named Roman Abramovich, who is a Russian oligarch. We built all his ships. He has 6 of them.
Wow. Jeez.
Eclipse has it's amazing. It has first of all, it has a crew of 82 crewmen.
Wow.
It has 2 helicopter decks. It has a ballroom. Has a submarine. A basketball court.
Oh, man.
I mean, it's got all kinds of bells and whistles and stuff. But that's the kind of ships we were building. Yeah, I mean, I went from building airfields and big bunkers to building marine berthings for LNG ships to then now building the ships. So I was building these super yachts, and we were living in between Doha and the south of France and north of Italy. So that was kind of nice. And then what did we do after that? Oh, and then we had the Arab Spring. Then we said it's not safe for my kids. So we came back to the States, came back to Northwest Florida, where I had a little summer house, a little summer cottage. And we came back for spring break for the kids because they were in school and spring break and Arab Spring. So we just never went back. It just became too uncertain. So I stayed here, divorced my wife. She was a drunk and she was not well mentally. And the judge, well, first of all, we poured everything we made in the lease into getting her healthy. That didn't work. So then I poured everything I had into lawyers, but that worked. And we got divorced. The judge gave me the kids full care and custody. So I've been raising my children by myself since 2013.
Wow.
I've been a single dad for my 2 kids. And then we moved up here when I got divorced, here being Northern Virginia. And yeah, so it was really, the timing was good. We came up here and then the timing was bad. I came up here looking to get a job in the government industry again in the States. I didn't want to go back abroad with 2 kids and not having a spouse. It's very difficult. So I said, I'll just work in the government service. And then there was a government shutdown and sequestration almost the moment I came here.
Wow.
So timing was absolutely horrible. And for a few months we did okay. I kept searching and everyone kept saying nobody's hiring because we just don't know how long this is going to last. And we don't know what the long-term impact is. Okay. So eventually I just ran out of money. I mean, you just can't go forever. And so we ran out of money and I had my 2 kids and we were homeless. So we were, I lived with friends and family, and I lived with the pastor of my church. And I had a broke down 1998 GMC Suburban that my brother-in-law gave me with 220,000 miles on it. And I essentially had to rebuild from scratch. It was really tough time. The VA helped me. The VA helped me get back on my feet. They got me stabilized my housing and really helped me. A lot of social services helped us. And at the end, I'll tell you what I call the story. But eventually, I got back on my feet, and the government started hiring, and I got hired by the government as a civil service guy working at the U.S. Department of Housing. Back to my housing days of buying houses and renovating houses, and
the VA asked me to go and tell my story, you know, and on my story I call from the penthouse to the outhouse to the White House, because we were doing so great, building super yachts, living the life, speaking multiple languages, and then we were broke and we were homeless. And so we went from the penthouse to the outhouse. And then the VA said to me, "You've got quite a story. Can you go and speak on our behalf about homeless veterans issues to, you know, legislators and donors and you know, United Way and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Red Cross?" So sure. I mean, I felt compelled to make a contribution back to the VA that helped me get back on my feet. And so I did that, and I became a national speaker, and I spoke at a lot of different places, and I told my story, and how, you know, you can go from being well educated, being very successful, and being good at what you do, and then, you know, you hit that proverbial banana peel in the parking lot and your life's turned upside down. And in my case, it was mental illness that was something my now ex-wife couldn't contend with, and it was catastrophic for the fabric of my family. And, you know, there you go. You end up where you end up, and you do the best, that you make the best choices you have. And it happens to the you know, it happens to all kinds of people. It's not, you know, it's not confined, if you will, to a demographic. It happens to everybody. And so so here I am. I'm speaking on behalf of the VA in many places, and then they asked me to mysteriously to have Thanksgiving. Okay, I agreed. I'm like, that's odd. But as it turns out, they couldn't tell me, but they had prepared. President Obama had asked to have Thanksgiving with some homeless vets and their families. So we fit the bill. We're right here in town, you know, in DC, and we had come so far, and had done so much public speaking and engagements with others that he had known about what we had been doing. And so we had Thanksgiving dinner with the Obama family, which was an amazing event, including grandma.
Nice.
Neat. And that's why I call it from the penthouse to the outhouse to the White House story.
Yeah.
And then since then, HUD, they put me in positions to work on IT stuff and data science, really. And they also had a problem of credibility at HUD, where I was working at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So my boss encouraged me to go back to graduate school. And his son had gone to Harvard graduate school, and he said, "You ought to apply." And I was really, of course, very hesitant, but he said, "See what happens." I did, and they accepted me. And so here we are. And so I ended up returning to graduate school, and meanwhile, my career was continuing in the government. And you know, we did some really great things with some really great people, won some federal awards for innovation in government, became the acting chief data officer for the agency. And then now I moved from housing and urban development back to the Air Force, and I work as a civilian in the Air Force. And I'm a technical director for all the data science for the operations community. So I've come back to my roots, where I started 30 years ago, back to the Air Force, and back to, you know, jets and bombs and planes and pilots and that kind of stuff, airfields. So that's the story. Did you get all that?
I did. I'm recording it as well so I can get back. But yeah, it's quite an inspiring story, sir. And I really thank you for your service. It's truly incredible.
Of course. And, you know, many, I feel, as I look at my classmates, you know, I can name a number of them, from Dean Ridgway to Joe Locke to Brian Lasky and many others.
come before and come after who serve, and I'm very, awed by their service and the things they've done. As I peer from the cyber perspective on their careers, like Joe, who was my little brother, who I recruited and brought out there, is in charge of the first Special Forces group for the Army. So he's right in the middle of that kind of stuff. And I've seen Brian Lasky as well, also a paratrooper and a Special Forces Ranger, also a beta who's done wonderful things himself. And so I feel humble next to the guys like that who are much more accomplished than me in their service. So I'm glad to just know them.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, last night I talked to the other highlight article with Mr. Craig Sheps.
Oh, Craig?
Yes, sir.
That's right. He's a doctor in the Navy.
Yes, sir.
Right? Yes, he was one of my classmates. He was a couple of years ahead of. He may not have been a couple of years ahead of me. He was a couple of classes ahead of me in pledge classes.
Yeah, cool. A lot of military ties. It's very cool.
Yeah, Craig, he's an inspiration. He was one of the fastest guys ever.
That's what he said.
Did he mention that?
Yeah, he did multiple times.
I'm not sure he was the humblest guy, but apparently you know him as the fastest guy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Good for him. I know he inspired. He and several of my brothers, Phil Lonergan and Dickie Winters, all wanted to end up in the medical profession. I'm glad to see that at least Craig did. I'm sure the others did as well, but I've lost touch with them. Craig Sheps. Well, that's fantastic.
So
I think his daughter a Jaguars cheerleader.
That's what he said. Yep, one of the three.
That's right. Yep, because he's down in Jacksonville. He wasn't there at the same time I was there, but I know he migrated down that way too. Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah, he said the other one's a sophomore right now, Virginia Tech, and she's working in the recruiting department for the football team, and she's trying to be like a walk-on place kicker, and she's babysitting.
That's right.
Babysitting Fuente's kids and all kinds of cool stuff.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah.
Well, good for her. I'm glad to hear that.
So I know you said your son's now in college as a beta. What is your daughter up to?
She's in high school.
Okay.
I'm not going to give you guys any family photos because all of a sudden I'll have visitors. She's in high school. She's a junior now, so she's approaching her, the twilight of her high school career. Yeah. She aspires to go to Virginia Tech as well. That's her first choice. And so I would love for her to be a Hokie as well. We'll see what happens, of course. Who knows? Everything's so uncertain nowadays with everything, right? I heard you guys had the largest application pool in the history of the world for this class. Did you hear that? It's 41,000 kids for the freshman class. Last year was 32,000, and that was the highest.
Right. That's crazy. That's why they're building more dorms right now.
I lived in Brody Hall, which I have seen now has been torn down and a new one built. But Brody Hall was the first student dorm ever on campus.
Wow. Where is that located on campus? Or where
on
was
Upper Quad?
Where?
Across from the student center.
Okay.
Squires. So like if you're standing at the War Memorial Chapel at the top of the drill field and looking towards Main Street, it's to your front and left. In fact, I lived in the corner overlooking the drill field, and at the time there was that bridge across the road wasn't there. Yeah, you could see all the way down the drill field.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Also, would you mind sending in any cool pictures you could think of? That'd be appreciated. That one of the ship, the yacht, super yacht, would be really cool too. You could send those in.
I'll see if I can find some. I have some with me on board, the different ships.
I mean, just in any pictures too, just back in college, all kinds of stuff.
Do you follow Premier League soccer by chance?
No, I used to about 5 years ago, but
You remember Chelsea?
Who?
Chelsea?
Oh yeah.
So Roman owns Chelsea Football Club.
Oh,
Roman
cool.
Abramovich. He owns Chelsea Football Club. He owns pretty much all the steel mills in the world. I mean, he's a international billionaire.
Wow, that's crazy. You say he's from Russia?
Yeah, Siberia.
Wow, that's crazy.
Mhm.
Is he the outright just one owner type deal?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. Yeah, they're definitely one of the wealthier clubs in the Premier League, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're the Yankees of the Premier League, right?
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. And that's all the questions I had. So if you want to add anything else other than that, though, it's gone really well.
I don't know if I can find those pictures. I got my Mac over there. It's dead, and a lot of my pictures are there. But meaning to get it over to the Mac store, but the lines are so long.
Oh yeah.
I'll see what I can find.
Very cool.
Find and send your way.
Well, yeah, thanks again for talking to me. Your story is incredible. Really enjoyed talking to you. And I hope if there's ever any sort of alumni anything that you'd come back so I can meet you face to face.
I tried to come back several times. Last time I was planning to come back, they had that hurricane that canceled the game.
Okay.
Was that couple must have been a couple seasons ago.
Yeah.
But I was down there like 2 months ago or so, 3 months ago.
Awesome.
October. Yeah, I was there in October. My daughter had to get her driver's license. The only DMV in the state of Virginia that had an opening was down near Abingdon. Fuck, 6 hours drive.
Oh man, that's where my girlfriend's from. That's crazy.
Really? I had to drive 6 hours. So I stayed. We went to Virginia Tech. I stayed in Blacksburg. Saw some of my buddies who were, like Latimer and a couple others. And then the next morning we brought her to DMV, and then drove home that day. But so I come down there from time to time. We'll catch up. I go by the house. I knock on the door and they were like, "Can I help you, sir?" And I'm like, "Let me in, damn it!" And I have to bring them all the way upstairs to show them my picture for my, what do they call those, composites? Is that what they call them?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, show them my composite to prove that I'm not some rando just showing up to sleep on their sofa.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Okay, listen, I know you probably got homework and a whole bunch of stuff to do, so I'll let you too. It's been a pleasure talking with you. If you want anything more than pictures, tell me, email me. You got my information. Yeah, just send me some stuff.
Yes, sir. Thank you again for speaking with me.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure.
All right. Enjoy your night.
Thanks, you too.